How do you grow like a VC-backed company without taking on investors? Do you want to create a lifestyle business, a performance business, or an empire? How do you scale to an exit without losing your freedom? Those are the questions, and this show is the answer. I'm psyched for the conversation. I've actually been doing some preparing and thinking of what are the tough questions I could ask Ryan. So I'm going to try to throw a few doozies at you today. Starting with not a tough one at all, but a really good one and an interesting one is your journey. How'd you land here?
Well, it depends, man. I could compress 25 years of experience in like 30 seconds, a minute. How long do you want, man? What would be most useful?
Give me a minute and a half.
Okay, minute and a half. I'm pretty good at. Okay. So I think like I got introduced to sales kind of out of the core belief that I saw my parents working their ass off, and they only got incrementally increasing in compensation. And so that attracted me because of the results. So I started off and it was like, I worked on what used to be inside sales, right? Where it was like more of a boiler room type environment, mid-market, enterprise. And then they did the same thing on a leadership perspective. And from there, one of the cool things I was able to do is have a team, build that team from 0 to 30 million in ARR in like 5.5 years. I only had really 4 salespeople throughout that time. And so that was the bulk of my career. And we could obviously get deeper into that. But then for the last 4 years, I've been helping companies, tech companies specifically, deploy those systems in their business with capital efficient growth. And about 19 months ago, I got introduced to ChatGPT like right when it came out. And as a byproduct of that, I started to I was blown away and scared shitless at the same time, because what I realized is that like this is going to literally change everything, as well as some of the biggest barriers I had in the past could be unlocked just by asking a few questions. And so I was excited. And so I've been really focused on companies help deliver that AI skill transformation from that. I also have a podcast called The Scale Up Show, which is amazing. I love doing a podcast. I'm happy you're doing it too, Dan. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, a lot of stuff on the personal side. Wife, 2 amazing kids, French bulldog named Larry, you name it, man. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think I hit the minute and a half mark. How did I do?
No, it's awesome. I think what you got me at is you have a dog with a human name named Larry. And so I have a dog named Dave.
Oh, nice.
And I have a sister of Dave named Betty. And Betty has a brother named Dennis. And my old dog was named Mike, because we are a dog family and we name our dogs human names. Anyway, let's talk about fucked up startups. So you've had a lot of experiences. You, according to your LinkedIn, you've interviewed over 200 CEOs. And I can only imagine the interviews. Give me an example of a time, Ryan, when the CEO in the first 5 minutes, you're like, this person's an idiot, or doesn't know how to lead. Give me, and why? I want to dive into that a little bit, because we're focused on the problems, and a lot of those problems start right at the top.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's like, the funny thing is, it says 200 in my profile. It's probably up to like 300 now. So I got to update that. I'm definitely due to update that. But it was truly like a masterclass, I would say, in leadership, what to do, what not to do. And then it exposed me to a lot of ideas that weren't even on my radar. So it was amazing as a byproduct of that. In terms of like where I think I've seen like some folks with the biggest mistakes or blind spots is I've seen companies that and leaders that and I've fallen prey to this as well, or victim to this, where your biggest strengths become your biggest blind spots as well. And so, like, for example, I've had product leaders that are so obsessed about the product that they ignore the go-to-market side. And they think the product is so good that it doesn't matter. They don't worry about distribution, right? Or they also discount like really, really good opportunities that are right in front of their face to really blow up their product through other people's distribution, which is like half the battle. It's like half product, half distribution, I guess 3 parts. And then leadership over like the team and your clients and your mission and vision. So that's what I would say is probably one of the biggest, where they get so siloed on their strength that they ignore, some of the other really critical parts of the puzzle.
So that's a good one. So the product person is so focused on their product that they're not seeing the forest through the trees and perhaps ignoring the go-to-market side. Good observation. Did you, or what would you do to solve that? How would you help that person and the team?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. This is like one of the simplest ones of anybody who's listening is like I've had CEOs on that might be 10 million in revenue, let's say, for example. And they have, let's say they're bootstraps. Say they've done an awesome job. It's really rare to get to 10 million. I think like when I looked at the stats, I think it's like 0.004% of companies, small and medium businesses get to 10 million in recurring revenue. So you have to be exceptional at what you do to get there. However, what I would say is one of the biggest things is they have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of capital, and they keep talking about hiring more engineers where, for example, they could hire literally one account manager and they have no cross-sell, upsell, or expansion motion, right? So they're a $10 million company. They have nobody harvesting all that goodwill with like maybe 500 clients. And that's like literally the easiest revenue that you can get that would pay for 5 engineers. So that's like one example of some things that I've seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. And it brings me to the thought that I tell every CEO that I talk to when we're discussing this topic. Your best prospect is your existing customer. Yeah. The cost of acquiring a new logo is far, far greater than the cost of generating more revenue from your existing customers. And it's just better. Which is why in the qualification process, it's real important to make sure that there is upsell and cross-sell opportunity with that customer. Because if you get a customer that can only buy your basic product, sure, it may be a quick transaction done, but there's no growth. And in a land and expand strategy, which is most every strategy that I see, you really need that. You need that growth opportunity. So right on. Mistakes. What other mistakes that you see? You mentioned the product person focusing on product. You mentioned some cross-sell, upsell. Here's one for you, actually. I'm seeing right now companies starting to realize that they need to put a lot more money into the post-sale. And I'm sure you're seeing some of this too. It used to be, let's go revenue at all costs and let's just bring in more and more new customers. But we took our eye off the ball on our existing customers. So tell me about your thoughts on that. What have you seen? Any interesting examples of where companies have screwed up because they're just letting their existing customers die on the vine?
Yeah, well, it's really so from a macro perspective. Are you familiar with Mark Casaglo?
No.
Used to be I think he was kind of like, I don't think his title was Chief Revenue Officer, but for Outreach.io, like he left there, I think maybe a year ago. But he was there since day one and grew the sales org. And so what he said, he actually got hired by a company, I think it was called Catalyst, which was a customer relationship management.
Good one too.
Yeah, it was a big one. And he resigned after working there. I think it was for like 6 months. He's like, I am so sick of nobody investing on their back end. He's like, I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall. I've never been in this situation where they don't value it. So bottom line, I'm telling you that to point out, like, that's obviously if a trend, that's what the company does. And someone who with a great deal of skill and ability resigns because of challenges like that. So that's one. And then what was the other thing? I forgot. I lost my train of thought. So I was trying to tell that story.
It's, talking to a lot of CEOs, mistakes that they're making. And in the first 5 minutes of that conversation, you're like, this person doesn't know what they're doing. What are some of those issues?
Yeah, well, it's not. I'll talk about myself, man. Like,
do it.
My business.
Let's go. Where'd you fuck up?
Yeah, so this is where I messed up. Same thing. I was trying to grow too fast without like nailing my product market fit with what I was doing, and so I was so focused on ramping up because that was hardwired into me as a revenue leader that's what I needed to do, and I didn't have my product totally nailed. So it was like kind of the inverse of the product CEO, right? I was just like, let's go. And, because of that, I didn't have the best retention early on. And then once I made that shift and I started focusing really on like, okay, and it's still a work in progress, right, man? Like you're always figuring this out kind of as you go. You're building the plane while you're flying it, right? But like, that's one of the things that I'm realizing too, is like the hardcore focus on like outcomes for your clients will lead to outcomes for your revenue. And like, I made that shift and it's like, it's deepening my relationships with customers. Like I'm getting much closer to them. It's it's blossoming the business relationship and byproducts from that. So I would say that's a mistake I made personally that I've been laser focused on because I was always in that revenue leader role versus the product role. So that's the flip side of it, if that makes sense.
Yep. No, I hear you. Now, also in your LinkedIn, Ryan, you have trained or taught over 800, I'm sure the number's bigger now, sales executives, senior leaders, sales reps, et cetera. What do you need to teach them? What are 3 things that you got to teach them almost every time because they're just not getting it?
It's a good question. So that was like VPs of sales and chief revenue officers. That number was that 800. So it's way more if you look at like sales and everything like that. I think like, here's the number one thing. And it's really interesting because like, there's a couple of things and I don't know if there's 3. I'll just go stream of thought with you on this because, but I would say number one is like, here's the thing. There's stuff that I'm sure I could teach a CRO at a $1 billion company. But I would say like you want to align and work with folks that have gone down the same exact path because operating a $1 billion org, which I've never done before, is a lot different than building something from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100, right? And so I think that's the number one thing is to understand where they're at in the journey because the problems, the focus levers are really different based on that stage. And so you have to understand where they're at, contextualize that. Because if you're talking to someone like they're a $30 billion company and they're a $1 million company, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're going to black out because it's not even close to what they're dealing with from day to day. So I say that context is really important. This is something I've been giving a lot of thought to, like literally today, the last few days, and over the last few weeks, is basically like I've been working on helping go-to-market teams really internalize and integrate AI like ChatGPT or Claude into what they're doing or Microsoft Copilot, for example, right? And one of the things with that I've realized is it's not because they're not capable of using it. It's not because they're not smart enough to use it. It's because literally they have habits that are hardwired into them where they're not using it. And that's the only barrier. Like it's interesting. I've done like direct coaching for people after I've done training and they'll multitask. So they'll half pay attention during the training. And then I walk them through. They're like, wow, this is amazing. Like I can't and all they need you to do is take 15, 20 minutes to leverage it and do it. You know what I mean? So I think that's number 2 is like our habits can be our biggest enemies. And that's not just AI skill. That could be with a lot of things related to sales, marketing, go-to-market, you name it. And then third, which is I'm trying to think, I had a really good one for third. Oh, this is the other one too, is I found out from working with a lot of different companies, and I have one particularly in mind that was a startup, set up a really good system for it. They had the exact right environment, perfect area, perfect type of company, perfect solution. And basically what it was like high annual contract value customer acquisition. They were set up like perfectly for it. However, there was a couple execution points that I made assumptions on that they didn't do. And as a result of it, it didn't work at all. And they were like stacked, right? It was like a lineup of baseball players that all hit like 40 to 50 home runs. Once we fixed those minor, and they were minor, Dan, really, really minor things like handoff points or other things. And once those were fixed, they started flying, right? So that just brings to me the value of like how tight you have to focus on execution to make sure the systems and what you put in place really, really rolls. So
I think it's about the little things. I think it's about the little things. I've seen on a regular basis, companies die. What's the saying? Die of 1,000 wounds or 1,000 cuts. And to your point, it is about the little things. It's getting simple things right. And that's super important.
Hello, this is Ryan here. Real quick, if you are enjoying this episode, please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment or review. If you want more help or just want to learn more about what the top SaaS CEOs and founders are doing, check out my website at www.ryanstaley.io. Join my newsletter, check out other free content and resources I have there, and let me know if you want to scale your business. Now back to the episode.
Before I dive into AI, and I got a bunch of AI-oriented questions because I'm intrigued by it too, I'd love to get your opinion on something that I call the job you take versus the job you do. And as a new employee, hopefully, that person has done an exceptional job of doing due diligence to know what they're getting into. And the company owes it to their interviewee to provide a unvarnished and candid, realistic set of expectations so the person knows what they're getting involved in. Where have you misread it? Where have you come in at a new job or a new situation and realized after that first week, oh shit, this is not what I expected at all. And now you're kind of dealing with something that's really negative and ugly and you got to fix it. Any examples of those? I've got a ton of them, but how about for you?
Yeah, I got a handful. I got some ones as individual contributors, and then I got ones as leaders. Any preference that you have?
Let's take one of both because these are really helpful. And this is what not to do when you're the interviewer ultimately. But go ahead, I want to hear what you got.
Yeah, so individual contributor level. I mean, the first job I took out of school, and I think maybe I felt like I was desperate or I wasn't patient because it was my first job out of school. I didn't have a lot of experience, although I did have successful sales experience. So I had an internship in selling advertising. But so I took this job and it was basically I had to make 250 dials a day, right? Like that was kind of like the minimal expectation or the ideal expectation. It's probably 200, right? So I did that. And then once I got there, and like I said, this is my first job out of school. My salary was a $1,500 a month draw, right? So the good thing is like I ended up making it was close to 80 grand. It was like $79,676 whatever my first year, right? So it was majority commission. So I made it work, but when I went there, it was probably one of the most dysfunctional HR companies I've ever seen in my life. And the CEO and the owner treated people like dog shit. Like it was terrible, but I just grinded my way and kind of fought through it. So that's one mistake. Like I didn't look at the culture. I didn't even consider that. I was just like, I'm lucky to have a job, eat the shit sandwich early. And then, you could go from there. Right. So moral of the story is I didn't talk to any employees besides the interviewing person. I didn't talk to anybody about the culture. That's one thing I would have looked at and just kind of understood that a little bit better. So that's on the individual contributor side. From a leadership side, I'm trying to think, here's one of the biggest mistakes I've made. And I think a lot of leaders make this is understanding equity and compensation and past numbers. And so what I mean by that is I've had areas where the CEO will sit there and talk about a kind of like a dream scenario of what the equity is going to be worth and how much money you're going to make. And it was very Wolf of Wall Street-ish. But I didn't understand the cap table or how many shares outstanding or any of that shit, which would have made it actually tactical and I could run my own scenarios. And I've talked to leaders today, literally a couple of weeks ago where they're working their ass off. They're for a company, their equity's rolled a couple of times and they can't get a straight answer on what it's worth. Right. And that's which means if they can't get a straight answer on what it's worth, that means it's not worth much at all. Right. So that was the other big one I would say getting into that, got to be really, really careful because you are going to especially if you're a revenue leader, you're going to be busting your ass to make those numbers. And so you want to know what you're working for outside of your comp. The other thing that's related to comp is I would also look at what last year's numbers were exactly with the team and why things didn't work out. And I would talk to some of the people, not just the top performers, but middle performers and ask them some of those questions as well. So those are a couple learning experiences.
So I think for all the founders that listen to this or CEOs of startups, growth stage companies, Be transparent to your potentially new head of sales or your CRO. Here's what the cap tables are looking like. Here's what your situation could look like under reasonable circumstances, provided you make your numbers over X time period. Here's what we did last year against our goals. Here's why we didn't achieve our goals. Here's what we need specifically you to do in order to get this company to where it needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. But be straight up and straightforward. You're going to avoid a whole lot of hassle. And the cost of making that wrong hire or making a hire that could be the right hire, but not setting expectations properly and having them leave, that cost is enormous. The recruitment fees alone, if there are any, are 25% of that person's, first year salary or more. Anyway, crazy stuff.
Dan, that's a great thing. And here's what I would say too. Like if you're a founder and you're interviewing a revenue leader in your earlier stage, even if you're mid-stage, chances are you're not hiring. If your experience is being a revenue leader, you're not hiring another revenue leader, right? You're probably trying to hire for someone else that has complementary strengths as you. So when you're going through that process, this is going to endear you to candidates and draw them in. Ask them like, hey, this is what I think we could do next year. This is, what I'm looking at. What are my blind spots that you see, right? And even if you ask those to the candidates, like, what am I missing? What are the blind spots? They're instantly going to start to understand, like if you take that approach, that their opinion is going to be valued when you hire them and respected. And at the same time, you're going to get so much information that's highly valuable that you might be missing and that they're going to shoot straight with you on. So I think that's something else that I would add as well.
Yeah. In my past experiences where I've picked the wrong company, and I've done that a few times, I always look back and I think to myself, what was part of the reason among many? And one that stands out all the time is during the interview process, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know to ask the question about the flux capacitor. How the fuck would I have known that? Until the first week or month in the job, someone says to me, hey, have you seen the flux capacitor? Like, no. Yeah, it's all broken and messed up. You know how to fix that? No, never. I don't even know what a flux capacitor is. And there's a lot of that. And you just kind of got to deal with it and roll with it. And, hopefully you can get past it. But as a CEO or founder, when you're hiring your first or any sales or go-to-market leader, I think it's critical that you show everything. You set expectations realistically and be humble. Because the fact that you got to that point, to your earlier point, Ryan, 0.00 whatever % of actual startups make it, you get to the point where you're hiring your first CRO, you're at multiple millions of dollars, single digits, whatever it may be, and you've done something amazing. No big deal to just show your warts and your bruises, and here's what I did wrong, and here's where we're broken. That's why I need you. So come on board and help me fix this stuff. I think that's the approach to take. You're the AI guy, big time. Your stuff on LinkedIn is phenomenal. All your tips, your advice, oh my God. In fact, earlier today, I was reading through some of your posts and every one of them brings so much value to the reader in terms of here's what you should do. Let's start with AI transformation as a whole. What are your thoughts on what the heck happened and is happening and what should we expect in Ryan Staley's opinion?
Wow. So there's a
big
lot
question,
that's happened. And we're recording this. I always like to time mark when we're recording this. So people have context because by the time it comes out, it might be a little different than what I say, right? So we're almost like we're end of June in 24, right? Is what we're doing. And so what's really happened is there's been an explosion of general purpose technologies, that is more advanced than anything we've ever seen in our lifetime that you can now get for like pennies on the dollar. That was restricted only to people that had massive war chests of money, and it was hidden behind, closed doors. So that's what's kind of happened. And as a result of that, the APIs that were available created an explosion of different niche apps that were built on top of it or segments of that. So That's what we've seen like over the last 19 months. And, when I say large language models, that's the ChatGPT, that's the Gemini, that's the Claude, that's the Copilot, the Microsoft Copilot, right? And so what's happening is like the models are getting better progressively, and the cost of compute's coming down on them. So these companies are getting more profitable as they're adding more users for it. And basically what I'm seeing as the quality of outputs is starting to get almost agentic. And when I say that, I say agent, I mean autonomous agent. And those are going to be released later this year. Google talked about Astra, which is their version. Claude's talked about one. Supposedly Amazon has one coming out. And ChatGPT or OpenAI has mentioned it as well. And so the way I could explain that is later this year, what's going to happen is these agents, these autonomous agents, right? I want to say autonomous because people refer to assistants, agents, it gets kind of muddled. So think of autonomous agents as like Jarvis from Tony Stark in Iron Man's suit, telling him to do 7 different things, and he wants the outcome. And basically all he has to do is identify the outcome, and Jarvis does those 7 things. He puts on the suit, he screws it together, he connects it to the mainframe, he links to another system, all that by just saying, Jarvis, I need XYZ. That's what's going to start happening with work. And I think most people are not ready for it. Most people aren't even ready for the chat models right now that are available, because they try it for email and they try it for 5 minutes, and we're in such an instant gratification approach or mindset because we've had so many things food sped to us that people try it for 5-10 minutes and it sucks. And then they don't try it again, right? And they're like, oh, I just use it for emails. It's okay. You know what I mean? And so, I think that's one of the barriers, and then habits is a barrier, like I mentioned. So that's where we're going with the future. So what's going to start happening is the back office is going to start to be more and more automated, and we're going to have technology as like a teammate that's going to eventually do a lot of work for us, and then we have oversight. So there's going to be less people needed to do the same amount of work. And that's where we're heading. The other factor is text to video is going to start ramping up really fast as well. You're seeing leading indicators of that with Sora and Pika and Luma. So that's kind of where we're at as of right now. And I'll pause right there. I'm only talking about like 6 to 12 months out because stuff's happening. So
gotcha. Love it. I want to dig into that a little bit more. So the companies that succeed or that are starting to succeed, I think there's going to be a huge dichotomy. Those that are using AI and are able to produce whatever they're producing, the productivity will increase dramatically for them. And those that are behind, and they will be very far behind. Are you seeing that already? And help me understand your perspective on that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely seeing that already. So I would say, here's one thing I want to identify too. I think when we say AI, it's become a term like productivity or efficiency or growth, right? There's a lot of meanings to it. So let me define it so that you understand kind of like what I'm pointing at. I think there's 2 core focuses within organizations of AI capabilities right now. There's AI data and product integrated, right? So that's like what I would say is one side of it. That requires more of a deep technical architecture understanding, system view. And then the other side, which is what I focus on, is more the human integration, integrating AI into people, right? And what they do with their day-to-day work and how to create them and make them superhuman. So those are kind of like the 2 buckets. And I think companies need really 2 chief AI officers, because effectively, if you look at it, most of the time, the people that are really good on the data side and technical architecture aren't as strong on like understanding like an EQ and emotional connection with people and understanding all those different areas. And so I think, and those are 2 kind of like different ways to look at it, if I would say there. What was the next part of the question? I kind of lost my train of thought again.
Are you seeing a separation between those that are playing ball and those that aren't? Yeah. And what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so a lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people are trying it. What I'm seeing, though, is a lot of companies are getting wrapped around the axle with the CFO saying that, like, oh, well, if you can't demonstrate ROI, you can't do it, right? So I would say the biggest blockers are that, and people are having a hard time articulating it because it's so new. But it's kind of like okay, well, we're using typewriters now. this whole internet thing sounds cool, but it's expensive to buy computers, and we don't know what the productivity gains is. So since we can't demonstrate the ROI, we're just going to wait, right? Which is like the dumbest thing you could do right now, right? So that's one side of it. The other blocker I'm seeing is legal. Legal will just say, oh, well, we're afraid of leaking our information, so nobody could use it. So they're putting out blanket policies like that, right? Which, a lot of them aren't even aware that there's data protection guarantees now that these companies are offering where it's not training on your data. So that's the other side of it. I think companies are using it, but companies don't understand how to master it. And most of the people on their orgs don't. So some companies are more progressive, I would say, are like Asana is more progressive on it. They have it tightly integrated. There's CEOs behind it, created AI transformation. I would love to have them on my show sometime. Another big one is Moderna. Yeah, am I even saying that the right way? The pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, Moderna.
Moderna.
Vaccine.
Yeah, I don't know why that sounds so weird coming off the lips, right?
I got it in my body right now.
with the vaccine, they created, I think, over 680 different GPTs in their organization, and they rolled it out to every single employee. So I think like Asana, Moderna are like really good versions of it. And then other companies I think there's three phases. You have ones like those that are kind of more leaders. Then you have others that are like, okay, well, we bought the tools, but most of the time their employees don't know how to use it, which is a big gap. And then you have the other side where it's like, oh, well, we can't do this because of security or there's no ROI. So I think there's kind of like three distinct buckets that people are in right now.
Yep, I got you. So you obviously offer a ton of great AI best practices to your audience. Question for you, if it can be answered. Can you suggest a B2B tech startup AI starter kit for the commercial side of the business, sales, marketing, customer success? What are the few, just that simple happy meal of you should be doing these things to solve these problems, create more efficiency and productivity?
Yeah. Good question. I think here's what I would say. I think the two base models that I like the most right now in this point in time are ChatGPT 4.0, Teams, which is the reason why I'm saying Teams is because you have that data protection. And I'm assuming most folks that were, if I were giving advice to are not in that over 500 employee kind of range. There might be some, but enterprise licenses, you got to be, I think it's over 500 employees or more. So most people are going to fall in the Teams bucket. That's like $30 a month per user. You don't need to do that for everyone, but you at least would want to do it for executives or people handling data, which I would recommend. You can have a large portion of your company using the free version because 4.0 is now free. So that's what I would use as like a starter tool, or Claude. Basically, they just released Sonnet 3.5, which is amazing as well. So those are the kind of like the two. I would pick one.
Okay. And what would you use it for in the organization to specifically do and handle?
Yeah. Well, marketing's got so much low-hanging fruit in terms of like repurposing content, analyzing data in terms of like, what it could be a lot of stuff. It could be analyzing high-performing content on specific social media platforms. It could be SEO. There's a lot of capabilities you could do. And so like, I think like I literally had a woman that I was showing some of this stuff to who's leading the marketing. And she's like, this is overwhelming because this could do the work of 4 people and this could do so much. So I think like that's one of the things you got to do is have a structured, prioritized plan on it, pointing to KPIs or OKRs that the company has. And so for marketing, I would definitely start with like content and optimization and customization for that across social, SEO, brand strategy, all those different areas. On the sales side, you can easily carve out 10 hours a week per employee just from the basics of like account research, strategic thinking, and also just like it's very, very good at persuasion. Most people don't think about that. And it's actually graded out. There's been research papers done where it has like a score of 87% on persuadability, and the best humans are like 79, right? Or 76 or something like that. So there's some really good ways where you could use that for like, okay, this is the customer's objection. Please reframe this, right? And so there's ways to do that. So I think those are a couple of areas, but what I would say is like, you got the tool, right? You got the core focus areas and go to market. And then what you also want to do, I think is part of the starter kit, is identify actual business use cases and then give them to the team and share them. From a leadership perspective, there's two ways I would implement it. One, you literally have to take the time using the tool, because this is like a foreign alien. So you can't like just delegate it down. You're doing yourself a massive disservice. So, and then share what you discovered with your team. Basically, then what you do is have your team work through it in like a hackathon format, and then basically vote on the best use cases, and then keep doing that. Have a Slack channel associated with it or chat channel, and then keep iterating on it. It's not a one and done. It's just like a constant. And if you do that, like that's what I would say, if you don't hire someone like me to help you implement all those, do all that work for you. But if you do it on your own, do that and constantly stay on top of it, make it like part of your weekly meetings. And then you're going to start to see really, really good traction.
That's awesome. Great advice. I appreciate it. Wonderful conversation. Hey, Ryan, people that want to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Yeah, I would say like, if it's something you're looking at for your business, Ryan@whalesellingsystem.com is my email. I also have my website is ryanstaley.io, where I have my podcast, The Scale Up Show, as well as a lot of my weekly newsletter on there. So I would say those are the key ways for consumption, along with LinkedIn, if you want any of that data. Or posts, like you mentioned, those are other areas. So email, website, or social or pod are probably the best ways.
Great. That's awesome. And I will congratulate you once again, because of all the people who I follow and read their social media content regularly, you provide the most value with little to no expectations in return, just to do the right thing. And that's awesome.
Thanks, man.
So
appreciate it.
Great job, buddy. Thanks for being in this conversation with me. Loved it. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. Thank you for checking out The Scale Up Show. My mission in life is to help founders and revenue leaders avoid all the pain and suffering in revenue growth so they can flip it and create a life of their own design. So if you enjoyed this show, please like, review, share it on social, and more importantly, just share it with a friend. Share it with someone that you think could learn and benefit from what you heard on today. But the more we get the message out, the more people we could help, the bigger the impact we make, and the bigger the community gets, which helps everybody. So once again, thank you for being a loyal listener. I appreciate you and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.